Thank you very much, Balázs. Welcome, everyone. Thanks for being here. As Balázs already said, at the beginning we were supposed to be two here together, me and my colleague Daniel. Unfortunately, he's got stuff to do in other parts of the world, but to all those who know him, Daniel says hi. Let's dive right into it. And I'll be picking up more or less where Jay just left off. We will have a look at what AI in general, and also generative AI like large language models, means to us in translation and localization. So the question is, how does all these new plug-and-play AI technologies that we have now, how do they affect our standard processes, the processes we have been using for years and decades? And based on that, we'll have a look at what the impact is of these technologies on the stakeholders in these processes. But not only that, the next question is, well, if this technology changes our processes and has an effect on the people who work in them, what are the consequences for quality? And what happens in terms of risk when we use these technologies? And ultimately, what does all this mean for our business models? So, starting off, as Jay did, he said artificial intelligence is the capability of machines to do things we thought required human intelligence. So basically, I have a definition that's phrased a bit different, but it's more or less the same. So artificial intelligence imitates human cognitive abilities. And it does so based on data, as we have also heard. And one thing, while we're talking a lot about deep learning in the context of Gen AI, AI can also be based on programmed processes. So not everything is deep learning. And when we look at the relationship that we as an industry have had to artificial intelligence, we see a big shift that has happened over the last years. We have been using AI in some form or another for quite some time. Jay said that this year it's the 70th birthday of machine translation. But AI used to be a pretty small part of what we were doing. Now, the situation has completely changed. Now translation has become a tiny, teeny part of artificial intelligence. And that is something we feel. That is something we get to see in enterprises. Because now we are in a situation that external stakeholders that have nothing to do with translation approach the translation departments and tell them, oh, by the way, use AI. That's quite a change. So let's start by digging a bit deeper into what all this means for us. So where does this plug-and-play AI capabilities fit into our processes? And as I said, I would like to walk you through some of our standard processes. Here, exemplified by our standard ISO 17100. So, as I already said, we have been using technology for a long time. The first wave of digitization we had concerned things like translation memory technology, dedicated AQA tools, and then a bit later on, translation business management systems. What happened here was we introduced a new way of working with translation data, namely recycling it using TMs. This also changed the way we did the actual translation. So instead of doing everything from scratch, we had to look at previously translated content, edit it, and this also had an impact on how we did quality assurance. We had new pricing schemes. And we had a first wave of relatively low-level automation, mainly in project management, based on simple rules, if this, then that. If this client orders, create a project with this template. What it also did, and what all the other waves of technological change have done, is it created more steps in the project. I had more preparation steps using a TM. And this also meant more support processes. All the technology I have to maintain, I have to set up, and I have to have people who know how to use it. Second wave, not so long ago, was the advent of neural machine translation. And in this situation, what was fundamentally different was that the impact was mainly on the actual language-related or production tasks. We started seeing things like content routing. Which segments do have to be edited, do have to be looked at, or are they good enough based on quality estimation or quality prediction? Or if I identify issues, can they be fixed automatically using automated post-editing? So we then started to see possibilities to bypass these classic production steps. And as before, this had an impact on how we do the actual work, be it editing or quality assurance. We had new business processes by defining triggers for a certain threshold when something should be sent into post-editing, for example, if enough people on our website say, I'm not happy with this translation. And of course, as before, we had an impact on our pricing schemes, and yet again, more steps and more support processes. We had to think about model training, model evaluation, MT deployment, maybe as a self-service for people in our companies. And now, what has happened is we're, let's say, in the middle of a third wave of automation. And this one is different because we're not talking about specialized technology anymore, which has to fit in at specific spots in our process. This technology has the potential to automate, support, or even replace steps across all our traditional processes. But one thing that's the same is we need to do the work. We have more preparation steps and we have more support processes, as we did with classic neural machine translation. So the extreme point of view that I would like to adopt today is, okay, what happens if we do what some people suggest, just replace everything with a large language model? So why do we need translation? Why do we need translators, revisers? Let's just generate or produce our multilingual content and have an expert have a look at it. And I would like to take a step back from all these wonderful possibilities to think with you about what this actually means for us, especially in the long run. So, based on this increasing complexity we have seen, we have also shifting roles when we look at our stakeholders. So, at the beginning, in a classic project process, we had people like account managers, project managers, and then with the first CAD tools, etc., people like localization engineers. But let's say the core of what we did, of what we were selling, were people who did the actual linguistic work. So we had translators, we had revisers, and maybe in-country reviewers. And as we added new technologies, the number of stakeholders increased with the number of support processes. So by introducing machine translation, we needed MT experts. And the role of some people in this process changed. So now our translators maybe do not do actual translation work anymore, but they do post-editing. Jay talked about the importance of data. So not only need we people who are able to deploy, maintain, train, customize machine translation systems in this setup, we also need people who take care of the data. If you don't have good data, there is no use in customizing or even training an MT system. So, both from the process perspective and from the stakeholder perspective, things get more complex as we add technology layers. Now, what happens with large language models? We already saw, we now need people like prompt engineers. So people who make a large language model do exactly what we want. And this is where the questions begin. Do we need one prompt engineer who does a generic prompt that works for all languages? Does that produce the quality we want? Or do we maybe need linguistic or translation prompt engineers who do the prompting tailored to specific language combinations, and in those language combinations maybe to specific content types, to specific clients? What do we need to get the most out of this? So, while many people argue that we don't really need translators and revisers as we did before, because maybe LLM output that's reviewed by an expert is enough, we see that even if we could cut out some people, our little graphic here gets quite crowded. So what we have been doing is we have been adding technology, new processes, support processes, and new people. All this maybe to cut out the old people we used to have in the process. Question is, what does this mean for quality and risk? In the classic process, we only had, as this brilliant graphic from Taos shows, by the way, this is what happens if you know the graphic. This is what happens when you ask ChatGPT to render it in grayscales. Looks nice, but let's say could be more attention to detail. So we used to have the idea that professional or human translation only produces high quality. And this is what the market expects. With the rise of MT, we now have seen the idea that we can have different quality definitions, and maybe for some use cases, some small mistakes don't matter, it is good enough. On the other hand, what we have seen is that our requirements getting more complex also. There are a lot of areas where we have compliance issues. We have style guides, we have terminology, we have stuff like search engine optimization, we have new linguistic requirements like plain language or gender-inclusive language. So also from that point of view, it didn't get easier those last years. And when we look at what happens, we also see quite some attempts to standardize the way these requirements are formulated, and also to standardize the way that we evaluate the quality. And then, of course, there's things like the EU AI Act that will have an impact on quality we need to deliver in specific areas. This all has led to yet more new roles in our processes. So today we have roles like translation or localization or language quality managers. So maybe quality is really what we should be focusing on when thinking about where to introduce our new technologies. When we look at these different phases that we have seen, it's pretty easy. Usually in a process, I have people who have nothing to do with quality. The account manager doesn't really do anything for my linguistic quality, or the language technology specialist. Then I have people who have, let's say, an implicit impact on quality. Maybe the localization engineer who can do QA rules, the project manager who can run them, or the terminologist who prepares a project. And then we have the people who actually make sure that the expected quality gets delivered. And that used to be, again, the translators, revisers, and the in-country reviewers. As we added more roles, we typically created roles that had an implicit impact on quality. So the MT experts and the language data managers made sure that maybe our NMT system performs as best as can be. At the same time, we took some, let's say, quality gateways away, maybe by routing content, by saying this segment is good enough. The translator does not have to look at it, or it doesn't have to be post-edited. And this, if we go to the extreme I mentioned earlier, is only getting more pronounced. Okay, we add prompt engineers, maybe linguistic prompt engineers, and we take the translators and the revisers completely out of the picture. So the only persons who are left are the in-country reviewers, or let's say the subject matter experts or expert reviewers, as they're often called. So we see that the direct control of quality has been decreasing. What does this mean now for our business models? We have seen that everything changes under the influence of technology. So what does this mean for us, for the way we make money, for the services we sell? During the rise of NMT, we started dividing our world into different categories of how content could be produced, of how translations could be produced. And the idea was, okay, there's a lot of content, like user-generated content, that can be just machine translated as is. Nobody will read it, and even if they do, there are no high-quality expectations, there is no risk. Then we had this middle layer of content that can be machine translated, but needs to be edited afterwards. And then we had what used to be our core business model, human translation, so high-quality translation. If we look at the current trends, I think the pyramid will look something like this. So the only difference will be, there will be unsupervised use cases, where content is just translated by machines, be it LLMs or classic NMT, and supervised, where someone has to look at it. And of course, this is widely out of proportion. The supervised part should be really, really tiny, but that wouldn't make a great slide. So what can we sell? This is what we used to sell, at least as LSPs. We sold translation and post-editing. As we have seen, these roles will maybe be phased out in favor of expert review. Are we the ones who are going to provide those experts? Who knows? And then there's, let's say, transversal services that can apply to both scenarios. Okay, of course, we can do management of the whole process. We can provide data services, helping clients to be able to use some AI capabilities. Then, of course, we could, depending on what we do and who we are, maybe we could provide the tech, or at least implement it for our customers. And, very important, maybe we could play a role in quality management, because this is a function that will be critical in the scenario we just saw. Of course, the question is, and here I'm going to quote Gaëtan, who sits in the audience, are those really services in times of do-it-yourself AI, or can the clients do it themselves? Who knows? Time will show. So maybe what will stay is helping them control quality and consulting them. Let's see. One thing is for sure, if we continue to sell some products like they have been sold in the past, we might have a problem. Because the expectation is that AI will make everything cheaper. And if we sell words, then maybe we do run into a problem. Because we have seen all the things that we need to do, all the people that we need, new people in the process, to make things work. And not just plugging in something that will produce any output and then trying maybe to squeeze a little more margin out of the translators. Because if you really take it seriously, the question is, will it really be cheaper? Will it really be cheaper with everything I have to do? upstream and downstream of my AI-enabled production process. So, to conclude, the first thing when we try to plug AI into our existing processes is the same thing that has happened over and over again. They're getting more complex, and there are new challenges. We have an impact on stakeholders, quality, and business models. These last months, at least in my personal circle, I have seen quite a few people who think about leaving the industry, translators. Who will replace them? Experts? At least not if the idea is to make cheaper services using AI. Because I don't think that a legal expert will do it if a translator won't. So who are these people? And what happens if they leave? And we might have a problem. Doing this is also not disruptive. Everybody talks about disruption. Doing this, if it's done wrong, is not disruption, it's erosion. We put it on top of our existing processes, and yeah, maybe it works in the short run, but once we have no more people who are willing to do the work downstream, it might look different. So it may not be sustainable. What we need to do, and what organizations need to do, is first define what they need and want in terms of quality for the different content types. That's the starting point for doing anything meaningful with AI. Then they really need a content strategy as part, maybe, of a global AI strategy on the company level. They desperately need a quality and risk management strategy to mitigate the risks that we introduce by using new technology. And they need to control their data. And maybe this is where we all come into play, helping them do this and enabling them to get the most out of it. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Simon. This was very insightful. And that brings me back to one of my pet peeves, that we need to make knowledge about technology and AI a part of general literacy for everyone. Right now, there's smoke in the room and we can't see clearly, and this will obviously disperse. With that, I would like to ask you if you have any questions to Simon. Gaetan, go ahead. I have this one, so I'm going to run around.
Thank you, Simon, for a great presentation, totally in line with what I think as well. Thanks for the quote. We've experienced at 6 Continents clients, which is why actually I came up with the do-it-yourself AI idea. They do believe they can do everything that by themselves, right? So they say, oh, we no longer need you as a language service provider. Eventually, we noticed that most of them actually do come back, and they are so better clients today. So I would like just to quote myself. It's from Joanna Maciejewska. Maybe you've read this online. She's an author and a video game enthusiast, and she says, I want AI to do my laundry and dishes so that I can do art and writing, not for AI to do my art and writing so that I can do my laundry and dishes. So my question is, so to which extent do you think that we should actually help our client, as you said, navigate this jungle of AI systems? Not to which extent, but do we, as language service companies, should step up in this role?
I mean, it depends on the client. We see clients who come to us explicitly saying, okay, somebody higher up in our company says we have to use AI, and they're implicitly asking, why do we need you? We need help to make them understand that this promise of easy plug and play is not the real thing, at least not if you care about quality. So I think it really depends on who you're talking to. in the client organization who your contact person is. It really depends. I mean, we have, even before large language models, we had clients who said, okay, I don't care if my website is brilliantly translated, please do a machine translation, and it goes online in 2 hours. So all of these things exist, but the question is, where can we make an impact, and how? So, yeah.
Thank you. More questions?
Hi, this is Laszlo from Nimdzi Insights, and I want to reflect on something that happened in Japan. In Japan, there was an initiative to create an agentic translation system to translate mangas. And there was a huge uproar from the manga translator community saying, well, for a great many people in the world, one of the prime ways of getting in touch with the Japanese culture is through mangas. Letting LLMs, or specifically AI, doing this work is degrading Japanese culture in the eyes of the rest of the world. And these are risks that should not be underestimated and not taken lightly. And I wonder if a similar conversation is happening with your clients when it comes to the quality, not just in terms of linguistic quality, but the ability to transfer message, brand image, identity to their customers and end users.
I mean, the problem is, and that was the first point of my conclusions, many people don't have it straight what quality is for them. Not yet. And I mean, the scenario you just described, of course, that's brilliant, because it's something that couldn't have otherwise been done. But the thing that we are a bit worried about is that people are implicitly still expecting what they got before. Implicitly, they didn't even have to ask for it because they had smart people who could guess it, or second guess it, or ask. And they're still thinking that maybe this technology can deliver the same quality. It maybe can, but you have to put in a lot of work without knowing if it will pay off. So that's the real question, and I think that's what you have to make people understand, which will be very hard, because the pressure comes from outside of our industry.
Thank you very much, Simon. Unfortunately, we don't have time for any more questions right now. We need to be very tight about it. And I see a conversation about this going on for hours or days. So let's continue this conversation outside this room. Right now, we need to proceed. So Ines, please make the switch, and let's give a round of applause to Simon.